Okay, so today's Saturday, and I wanted to talk about what everyone's really talking about, which is the Miran Paper, which some people are now calling the Mar-a-Lago Accords, okay? And Stefan Miran, who's now the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors to the President in March of 2025, okay, so he just got a name, wrote a paper in November of 2024, which is now being called the Miran Papers. And as you can see here, he called it a user's guide to restructuring global trading system. And in here, he goes through the options, as he says, that President Trump has at his disposal. And it was basically, when you come down to it, there are multiple little things, but there are three main processes that they're looking at. One is tariff everybody. When you go through the paper, tariff everybody at a very high level. That's the first thing he says, okay? Second, lower the interest rates. And as we know, Bessent has been working very hard to lower the 10-year bond, and he's been successful, down about a half a point, 50 basis points so far. The question is it going to continue? And we made a video on this whole thing. And then the third point is using our economic and military power to entice countries to then take their holdings of the 10-year treasury and swap it into 100-year bonds, okay? They're the three processes, a lot of little things underneath there, as you can imagine, but basically they're saying we use gunboat diplomacy to get where we want to go. Now I'm also going to attach another article where this gentleman talks about, talks about unpacking the Mar-a-Lago Accord. And you can see here where she said it's an idea floated by Stefan Miran, the newly appointed chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. And they say it's like the Plaza Accord in the sense that the dollar was way overvalued then, and so we came up with the Plaza Accord, which was a global accord. All the other countries lowered the value of the dollar, okay? I know it sounds easy, but it was not easy, okay? We had to really twist some arms to get that done. And she says that all these things that are being proposed by Miran, she feels that the logic is flawed for at least 5 reasons. Now look, I'm not here to discuss this. I want to come up with a narrative, but I'm going to show you the 5 points. You can read them yourself. I would suggest you read the Miran paper because it is obviously a blueprint for this administration, and they're moving forward on it. Here's the second reason, and she also points out here, Miran kind of blames the dollar being the reserve currency, saying that the reserve currency, since it's being purchased by all the countries in the world so they can trade with it, is always overvalued, okay, against every other currency. And so the question, and this is what hurts our manufacturing over time because it's always cheaper to go build it somewhere else. So how do we lower the value, the exchange rate of our currency and still maintain reserve currency? If you ask me, the power that we get from the reserve currency is, I would say, really hard to give up. So it'd be very interesting to see if we can thread the needle here. She then talks about the 100-year bond and how she doesn't think it's going to achieve what they want, but again, you can read it yourself. And then she goes to 4 and 5, saying the Mar-a-Lago Accord idea assumes that economic coercion and gunboat diplomacy will force trade and investment partner countries to strengthen their currencies and accept U.S. debt restructuring, okay? But the last sentence of the article is very key. She says, this will not solve the U.S. Deficit problem. International cooperation to push back on the accord is sorely needed as much for the U.S. people as for the rest of the world. Okay, so can we come up with a narrative for Mr. Miran that actually makes sense? Frankly, I think we can. Can it be executed is really the question. And what will we look like? What will our allies look like? What will our friends look like? What will our enemies look like? This is all now up for grabs. But let's go through what a narrative could actually look like. So let's say the United States says, we're going to put 25% tariffs on all your cars, okay? And we've seen the reports that an average of $3,500 to $12,500 increase in car prices in the United States with this 25%. And for some cars, it's as much as $30,000 when the entire car is imported. Let's say, I think, there's 3 European car manufacturers that are facing huge increases, okay? So the first thing we do is we put on the tariffs, okay? The second thing, Bessent is working to lower the interest rate on the 10-year. While Trump is out there, everything he's doing is to drive down energy prices because that drives down inflation, which will drive down the interest rates. And so then when the interest rates are down, now we start negotiating with our trading partners on the 25% tariffs. And what could we say to them? We could say, hey, we're putting on these 25%, but if you sit there and say, look, we'll take your 100-year bond, but you have to lower your tariffs to 5%, okay? Or we could say to them, hey, look, we'll lower the tariffs to 5%, but you have to change in all your 10-year treasuries for the 100-year treasury bond. So let's do the Europeans, all right? So how if the U.S. goes to Europeans or the Europeans counter? It doesn't matter how it all works out. I'm just saying, what can a narrative look like? So either we say or the Europeans say, listen, we just approved $800 billion to spend on defense, but they need, as they say themselves, they want to make a proposal to the United States. They need 5 to 10 years of United States support so they can take over, okay? Because they have to build the factories, get everything up, train the people. This is a transition period, 5 to 10 years, okay? So let's say either we or the Europeans say, look, we'll give support to the European NATO and Ukraine for 5 years, okay? And in exchange for that, all right, the dollar is lowered and we will lower the tariffs for you if you exchange into the 100-year bond, okay? And so now the Europeans have a choice. They could say, okay, we're going to do this on our own. We're going to defend the Ukraine, spend trillions of dollars building up our defense, and all the time while our economy is under these huge tariffs from the United States. Or they could say, hey, okay, let's cut a deal with the United States. We'll do it for 5 years. And while we do that for 5 years, we'll rebuild our supply chains elsewhere, okay? And they then come in and help us either give us equipment or, whatever, so that we can help defend the Ukrainians at this time. And then 5 years we take over and it becomes a European project and the Americans go back to America, okay? So you can see where countries will be tempted to cut a deal with the United States. Let's say you're Japan. What do you need? You need energy, you need food, and you need protection. They have $1 trillion in treasuries, and of course, we just tariffed them 25%, and they're trying to figure out what to do. So could they cut a deal along the same line? Hey, if you agreed to defend us and you lower the tariffs, we'll swap our treasuries into the long bond. These are choices that people are going to make. That's what they call gunboat diplomacy. And so the question is will this work? I have no idea. What do you think? Tell me in the comments and like and follow.